Hi, I'm Elizabeth Agnew, founder of Eternal Goddess, and welcome back to the Beyond the Scenes podcast. On today's episode, I'll be talking to Andrea Cheong, the founder of the Monday Mindfulness Method, a way of making sure your wardrobe is on the route to becoming just a little bit more sustainable. If you want to keep up to date with future episodes from the podcast and more from Eternal Goddess, make sure you're following us on Instagram. Hello!
Hi!
So, shall we start with you explaining a little bit about who you are and what you do? It can be as vague as you want or as detailed as possible.
Sure, I'm Andrea Cheong, and I started out as an influencer with kind of a journalist background, and I, like so many people in their 20s, kind of struggled with what I was doing with my life, paired with the fact that, social media is such a new industry to be in, and it's very complicated, and it got to the stage where I wasn't so comfortable with my role in it, and so I tried to pivot away. I was working for a magazine freelance, and then I set up my own consultancy agency, kind of doing social media content strategy and influencer stuff for premium brands. And last year, I think it was pretty much exactly last year, I started posting on TikTok, and that really took off, and that's kind of where we are now.
I think I found you originally on TikTok, and I can't say specifically when because I've been following you on social media, I don't know, maybe a year.
Really? Wow.
Maybe that long. I genuinely don't know because you've just kind of always been in my feed, and you make amazing content. But to my vague knowledge, I believe I started following you because you spoke about fashion sustainability. And then I went over to your Instagram and went, oh, she's a stylish lady. And she talks about things in her stories. So what you do, and I think it's just absolutely genius, and I get very excited every Monday to tap through your stories, is the Monday Mindfulness Method. So how would you describe the Monday Mindfulness Method? What is it about? What is it to achieve?
So it's the Mindful Monday Method.
Have I got it the wrong way around?
It's alliteration, so people are this happens a lot of corrections with articles and stuff.
I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, how did you come up with the Mindful Monday Method? What led to you creating that on your Instagram stories?
So it was 2019, and I was having a really hard time with my mental health, bad place, and it really made me reevaluate who I was. Frankly, really hated myself. I don't know if anyone's ever looked in the mirror and been like, you're actually a horrible person. But I just wasn't proud of who I'd become, and I think, you can blame toxic industries or toxic workplace or whatever, but at the end of the day, I was there, I need to take responsibility for myself. So I really started to evaluate what the hell I was doing, especially when your job becomes so much of your identity, which is problematic. I started to think, okay, if it's something I'm going to always struggle with separating, how do I make my job something that I feel proud to do? And I was really concerned with the quality of clothing that was available. And I haven't really taken fast fashion money. I didn't ever receive a substantial amount of gifting from fast fashion anyway. But and at one stage I even considered, is it possible for me to work with fast fashion brands and still do this? And very quickly I realized there was absolutely no way.
That's not an option.
But everyone starts from someplace. You don't wake up being, I'm sustainable today and forever. So that's kind of where it started, where I was like, hey, there's a really big quality issue. I was really concerned with planned obsolescence. I was also always wondering, why do I have nothing to wear? I work in fashion. I don't have a problem styling myself. I'm spending so much money every month, and I don't know where it's going. And I realized that nothing was lasting, and I can sew. But it got to the point where there were things that I wasn't able to repair it. And so that's where it came from. I started reviewing stores and posting it on Instagram stories. And for the first few months, it felt like I was just kind of talking to myself. And now it's so nice because I feel like I have a whole community of people that are so interested in the same thing. and people teach me stuff all the time. So that's where it started.
It feels like you built this really beautiful community, and like I will say, I obviously am interested in sustainable fashion, but also I believe that there is no such thing as being truly 100% sustainable. And I'm also very interested in different brands, because I have in the past, obviously, and still do sometimes, buy things fast fashion. But I've also always had an interest in higher brands and designer brands, and I love that you look at both from a sustainable standpoint. And from going through your stories every single week, I learn so much about a brand that maybe I didn't know about that brand before. A lot of them I am aware of, but it really helps myself and obviously everyone else in the community evaluate which brands are worth approaching, to spend your money wisely. Something that you've spoken about a lot before is spending money wisely. And obviously we're living in a little bit of a general living crisis in this country, and not a lot of people have free cash to spend on clothing. So they then will spend it on cheap fast fashion because they can get more for their buck, but that obviously doesn't mean it's going to last. Do you think that, well, and I know what your answer is going to be, but do you think that if you evaluate these brands and you look at the fabrics involved and the percentages of the detail of each object, that you are actually going to spend more money, save more money? You'll save more money if you spend more money.
Oh, it's so hard because something costing more is actually very arbitrary. It doesn't actually mean it's going to be better quality.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why when people are like, oh, if I spend more on this brand rather than that brand, am I guaranteeing? There is no guarantee with anything. And even with my reviews, those reviews are only valid for the amount of time that collection is there. That's why I have to go back again and again. So I feel like investing in something better made rather than looking at the price, I know sometimes they're hand in hand, but looking at something that's better made, better materials, even if you don't care about sustainability, that's going to be a better payoff for you in the long run. But I think in terms of saving money in the long run, one thing that is not spoken about enough, because it's not glamorous, it's not sexy, is repair. And most of us don't know how to sew on a button properly. You know, zips are actually quite difficult even for professionals. So there's that too. And it's just such a lost art. And I feel like if someone really wanted the hard truth of how to have a more sustainable wardrobe and save money, it would be stop buying synthetic blends and learn to sew. Mm-hmm. And people don't like to hear that.
No, they don't. I mean, our last episode was about embroidery and the lost art in that sense. And we did speak a little bit about how you don't get taught these things in school anymore because it just doesn't come up. We've moved past that as a society. I'm very lucky that my mum could sew growing up, and I'm very short, so lots of things needed bringing up or taking in to fit me, and she would do that for me, and I have gained some skills through her. But if I didn't have a mother that could sew, I'd have no understanding of even the basics of fixing an item. Do you think that could change in the future, get back into the school system?
I don't think so, because everything is moving into this whole digital space. And I also think that something like textiles, which I did do at school actually, is still quite gendered, and I think that's a problem too. And it's interesting how, I mean, this is a bit of a diversion, but it's interesting how fashion is thought of as such a female dominated space, but if you think about the people that own and run the companies, most of them are men. Think about the private equity firms that own the big designers, or think about the CEOs and the business people, they're mostly men. So that's interesting as well, but that was speaking from my own experience, my great grandfather was a tailor in Savile Row, and then he taught my grandma. But actually, we don't talk about how gendered these things are, maybe because it's just so obvious that it is. Or we talk more about gender expression through fashion, but what about
how we're taught things from a really early age. Textiles wasn't available at my school. That wasn't something that we did. We did the tiniest amount of sewing in art class in primary school, until I think they quickly realised that we probably shouldn't be playing around with needles at such a young age. So that never really happened. When you go into these stores, which I feel like you must spend hours of your life in, going through racks constantly, do you find that there is this massive disparity between synthetics and natural fibres? I assume the majority are synthetic, but are you seeing a gradual shift between natural fibres slowly starting to come back into the mainstream? Because they used to be all we wore.
Yeah.
Until plastic.
Yeah, until like 50s, 60s, like the war times. No, I don't. Because everything that I see now that... So, okay, for example, like I'll go into a store and I'll review a collection or that latest drop or whatever, and this is fast fashion we're talking about, and I'll be like, actually, you know what, there was a great deal of organic cotton being used, there's quite a lot of like majority natural materials, even if it was synthetic blend, like you can kind of see why they use the synthetics. I don't approve of it, but I can understand. And then I'll go in 2 weeks later and it will be as if it was a completely different store and a complete, like, they're just so insincere. It's completely insincere. And the thing is that recycled polyester is now being used as something to be proud of. But recycled polyester actually uses virgin polyester too. It can't be infinitely recycled. And there's the argument that recycled plastics are used... are made from plastic bottles, and so plastic bottles can be made from all plastic bottles, and so that's not necessarily like closed loop, but like that's their own happy little system, and fashion is taking away from those plastics. So yeah, I see a huge dependency on recycled plastics more so than lower impact natural fibers, and I think it's just because it's cheaper and it's better for their bottom line. So no, I'm not seeing that much improvement. I think where we are seeing a little bit more improvement is transparency with more premium brands. I think they're really trying to sort out their supply chains. And the thing is that this is very expensive to do. And the bigger of a company you are, the harder it is and the longer it takes. But what I do think is important is transparency. And I don't think that transparency alone makes you sustainable, or even close to. However, it's so important for the consumers, because I feel like it's better that a brand just owns that they're not sustainable, like they're not even like they're so that you know that you don't have the wool pulled over your eyes, and so you know that if you shop there it's not sustainable. I know that it's the consumer's choice. I think it's only very, very problematic when retailers start to basically greenwash, and some people have very mixed messaging, and it's not just fast fashion brands that you can think of that have very mixed messaging. It's also very premium brands too, and I think that's the frustration, because you want to back them or you want to believe them, and then when you go and check the labels and you check the quality, it's actually pretty shocking.
I think everything you just said is completely understandable, and it's such a shame to see such a rise in this culture of our society talking about sustainability, talking about climate change and how to save our dying planet, and people are sort of lying to consumers or doing the bare minimum. I saw something recently, it was just at the time of recording, Earth Day was only a couple of days ago, and I believe it was Balenciaga put out a post, ooh, Earth Day, yeah, we're doing what we can, and someone replied on Twitter and went, but look how many collections you've put out in the last year. It's not necessary. On to something that I wanted to talk about, and this is a good segue. What are some of the best, and let's start with the best. Overall, some of the best things you've seen recently in a shop in current collections from different brands that you would say, I would recommend you spent your money on this.
I produce these videos for Who What Wear on like the best of certain stores. There are some shops or some brands I just won't even bother, because I just know from good authority, aka people that work in the headquarters, that they just don't care. So I will never even bother, because if I know, then So I think I produce these videos for Who What Wear, and I think there's a difference between something passing my method and me saying that I would actually buy it. I think because of overproduction, 90% of the stuff out there is stuff that didn't need to exist. I mean, 90% is like a figure that I've made up in my head, but like, you know, figuratively. So in terms of like the best that I've seen out there, I would ask like best for whom and what occasion.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing, like...
It's also nuanced.
And the thing is that I'm trying to, like, give people the information to make those decisions for themselves and not rely on an influencer, a brand, a magazine, a celebrity to tell them, because that person doesn't know their needs. Like, some people will say, oh, I don't want to wear animal fiber. What are my options? And I'm like, organic cotton. And if that's not enough, I understand that there's a frustration because there's just not enough textile innovation. And I was talking to this lady today, and she owns her own like sustainable PR firm, and she was saying that her clients go to all these textile shows, like these expos and stuff, these industry things, and like out of like an entire massive convention, maybe 4 or 5 textile companies or whatever will have actual sustainable fibers. So I understand that there's a frustration, but like this is where we are. We're only at the start of innovation. So yeah, it's a real tough one. I think if you can make up a person, like give me their age, their profession, their, you know, their income, maybe then I can like think, okay, no, this might be good for you. Because the thing is, like, if people ask me really broad questions, especially on social media, like what's a good workwear brand, I honestly can't. I don't think I have enough time in a video for that. But if someone DM'd me, which they do a lot, and they're like, is this item good? And they'll link me, or they'll say, okay, I have £50, I can only shop from this one website because I have a voucher, what's a good buy? I can help them then. But it's so individual.
So speaking, obviously, secondhand is one of the best ways to shop more sustainably. The other major option is just wear what you already own. What would be your first tips for someone who is at the start of their growing more sustainable journey, like you once were, like I once was? What would you give tips to them, say to them, to slowly start changing how we interact with our own personal wardrobe?
Well, I think with the Mindful Monday method, the first step is the wardrobe audit. So I would really do that first. And we work in me, myself and I, we work in seasons. So right now we're looking at spring, summer. Anything that's winter-based, you want to pack up. I use vacuum storage bags. And you want to look at what you have left. Out of this, you want to make a pile that is for repairs, or something that you really love, you want to keep, but let's say it's not like quite your size, or, you know, it's sentimental. So you have a pile for stuff that you essentially want to keep, but it's not ready to wear right now. Then you want a pile for stuff that you literally just don't want, and you will donate it or recycle it. It's just, let's see how it goes, or sell it. And so with what you're left with, 70 to 80% of that should be wardrobe essentials that you can carry on to all seasons. So, you know, your t-shirts, your jeans, your lightweight knits, and like, what else is, oh God, what else? Oh, smart work trousers, suits, you know, you get the gist, workwear. So that should be about 70 to 80% of your wardrobe. And then the most important part with this is not actually looking at what you already own and what you already like, because you don't need any more of that now. What you should be looking at is in your, I don't want to call it a discard pile, but in your I don't want this anymore pile, you should really analyze what's in there. Is it a certain retailer that keeps cropping up? Do you now realize that they don't fit you very well? Because actually on the subject of trousers, it's not just the rise, but it's also how much of a bum or tummy you have. The measurements are really different. And some brands accommodate more for a bum, and some brands accommodate more for what I call my marsupial pouch.
The tum.
Yeah, my womb. And that's one thing to know as well. Like, if a retailer doesn't fit you there, then why bother? Why bother even trying trousers from there anymore? So you'll also start to realize, okay, there's a lot of like acrylic, for example, in this pile. You need to analyze what doesn't work for you, because if it turns out that you literally don't even mind polyester, okay, I'd rather you buy one polyester thing than 10 organic cotton items. Think about it. Whatever leads to you buying less is always the better choice. So that's really important. And then obviously there is your budget. And so this is more so to understand if I do need to invest in something, or if I find that what I really need in my wardrobe, it might be a little bit out of my budget. It's to really understand, do you need to do buy now, pay later? I know that's a very controversial payment method, but you know, if you think you are responsible financially, I mean, I'm fine with it, you know. Or do I need to put on credit, or do I need to like save? Whatever your means is. Budget is super, super important, because one thing I realized is that I could actually afford higher item things if I literally just didn't shop so much.
But I found this myself. The less I try and reduce the amount of clothes I buy now, and you know, I don't have a high income at all, but I still put aside a certain amount of money per month and say, I'm gonna buy one thing that I know is gonna last me a long time, and suddenly I don't overconsume. I don't find myself endlessly scrolling on Depop or checking what used to be my favourite sites to see, oh, well, I like that, or I like that, because I've now got a wish list. And I go back to my wish list and I go, oh, I can afford this now, or next month that will be mine. And I found I now actually love my clothes a lot more. I don't have the, I've got nothing to wear.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from like decision fatigue as well. Like we just have too much choice, and I think we've come to that expectation that we should have that much choice. And I feel a lot of people get very frustrated when I don't have better alternatives for them, and I literally say, just don't buy it. I mean, it's just not good. And it's like, do you really need a pink cape though? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I love a cape and I love pink, but even I don't need a pink cape. Do you really need a pink cape?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the whole budget thing. And then I think with the sustainability goal, like you say, some people who have just started off their journey, they're not going to immediately be like, I'm zero waste. Like, very few people can do that and commit to it. So I think, first of all, just understand what your goal is with shopping. Because most people are just like, I just want to look good, I just want a good value for money. And it's like, okay, fine. But why you need to have done your wardrobe audit to understand why you bought that thing, because you thought it looked good, and then you actually don't want it anymore. So what is it about that item? And so the sustainability goal is super, super important. And then steps 4 and 5, essentially what you see on TikTok and Instagram, it's all about material composition, whether or not you're being greenwashed. Is it a good quality? Is it constructed properly? And I think that stuff is more visual, and it's stuff that I can demonstrate easier than, let's say, a wardrobe audit. I would say, following the Mindful Monday method, you're actually going to realize you're not buying very much. And I think one of the biggest, people like guidelines. I mean, one of the biggest guidelines with that is don't buy synthetic blends and don't buy synthetics for your everyday wardrobe. There are exceptions, swimwear, swimwear, workout clothes, anything technical fabric, occasion wear I think is okay within reason. But that's what I would say. And in 2019, after I had such a bad mental health episode, and I actually spent £1,600 in that year, because I followed my own method, and I was like, well, you have to practice what you preach. Like, you're literally telling people that they shouldn't buy this like organza polyester top for £20. You better not buy that yourself. Like, you know, you can't be a hypocrite. And I actually only spent 1.6k that year, and that was the year I started working for Vogue. That was the year I opened my own consultancy. That was the year I went on this like ridiculous press trip, and I had such imposter syndrome because everyone there was like huge YouTubers, and there was like little me, and I was like, what am I doing here? But these are milestones in a career or in a year that you would expect, okay, she would have a new outfit for that, or she would like invest in new clothes for that. I also went on a really big trip to LA as well. And like, the thing is that I just didn't need to spend that money. And people were like, oh, well, you were an influencer, so you must have been gifted. No. Do you think what I do like encourages gifting? Because it doesn't. People are terrified, and I say no to a lot of things as well. So no, I wasn't gifted that year. Let me think. No.
And the thing is, it's 1.6 sounds like a lot of money when you initially say it, because it is a lot of money.
Of course,
like
it's a
if
lot of
someone
money.
just handed me 1.6k right now, I'd froth at the mouth. But actually, when you spread it across the year and you look at what you spend other money on yearly, I'm sure there are lots of people who spend that much on Deliveroo a year.
Yeah, and
who spend that much on subscription services, who spend that much buying coffee, you know? And suddenly, it's really not that much money to spend on clothing a year, especially when you're buying, you're buying better and probably spending a little bit more for less items. It's not a lot.
And I think with that as well, you know, I live in London, I work in fashion, I see new things all the time. So I think that first year I did shop at places like fast fashion places. That first year I was learning, because like I said, I was trying to figure out, is it still possible? And I think as months went on, I realized that there was not even any point. Even like the planned obsolescence is real. Like even if it's 100% cotton, it's going to deteriorate so much faster than something that was better made. And so, you know, quality and sustainability go so much hand in hand, and it's one of the things that I feel people don't talk enough about. Brands don't talk about it enough because they don't have the quality and they don't want people to focus on it. Planned obsolescence is literally like their lifeblood, and you know, don't want to be like critical of anyone too much, but like journalists and influencers don't know how to talk about it because they actually don't know what to look for, you know. So it's one of those things that flies under the radar, and I think when people start prioritizing quality, innately they will be shopping more sustainably, even if they have no intention to help the environment. You just will, because you'll realize. That's what happened with me, because Mindful Monday didn't start off being about environmentalism at all. It was about, like you say, spending your money wisely.
Knowledge is power.
And
genuinely, knowledge is power in all of these things. I wish, looking back, when I was starting to come into the fashion sphere, I felt like I had to constantly buy new things to keep up with the people that I was inspired by. And I want to look like her, I want to look like her, I want to have what she's having. Until I realised I can take inspiration from your fashion, but I don't need to have the exact same things as you. Like, I am my own person. I don't need to copy what this person's doing. Like, no one needs to copy exactly what Molly May's wearing. You don't need to do that. You're allowed to do it your own way, both with your personal style and your journey to sustainability.
Yeah, and I think I've also mentioned this on social media before, and you know, like, this is absolutely no shade, because I would say most of my friends are in the same space as me and they would be considered influencers, so there's absolutely no shade to them at all. I don't think that anyone's better than anybody else just because of what they tout or just because of where they shop. But one of the things I've noticed is that they'll say, oh, this is really good quality, and they won't substantiate it. And even in the instances that it's a passable quality and I can understand where they're coming from, my argument is you get gifted this, or, you know, you have a lot of clothes. The typical person doesn't have the options you do. So yeah, it is good quality when you're only wearing it once or twice or 3 times before you sell it on, or whatever you want to do with it. Whereas a typical person will literally have that as one of their, like, maybe 5 options. It's not good quality after more than, you know, a couple wears. But you don't see that because, one, you didn't pay for it, and secondly, you didn't. You have so much choice. You can wear whatever you want, and if you know, if you want a new dress, you just ask for it. So I think that's one thing that I think people, my peers, need to have some perspective on. I would completely agree. I mean, coming from that sort of world, and I think, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion for sure, but like, don't try and convince people that Shein is good quality, you know, or like Misguided is good quality. Like, you know, like, I get duped too. Like, I am not going to mention any brands, but like, I chose this piece of clothing, and I thought, oh my god, it's so cool because it's this like new innovation, this new material. And I think I've worn it like 5-6 times, and I was like, whoa, it's pilling already. So even I get duped. Like, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but even I get a little bit fooled. And so I'm not saying anyone does it maliciously. I'm not saying that anyone does it with ill intent, but I think just like be more cautious about what you're promoting, you know?
Thank you. I think let's end on something that I ask anyone that I interview, and will be a running theme for the podcast. And it's very vague again. You can nuance it. What does fashion mean to you? How do you interpret fashion?
Whoa.
I know.
Big, like, philosophical questions here. What does fashion mean to you? I feel like I'm going to have to ponder on that a little bit more. However, I'm doing this course on FutureLearn. And
oh, I love FutureLearn.
It's so good. It's so good.
Jeez.
Like, I learned so much from it. But I'm doing this course, and there was this whole like module about what does fashion mean to you. And I still didn't craft my answer, but I stalked everybody else's answers, and I made notes on their answers, and everybody kept talking about self-expression and identity. And I just thought that was interesting, because fashion is like a tool for, I think, I wouldn't say like self-expression, but it's definitely like a statement. Like, I always say you should vote with your wallet, and I would say that it's more for me like identity, not as like, oh, I am this age, I work this job, I'm creative, I'm, you know, whatever, but more just knowing that what you've bought, what you're wearing, what it's made of, its history, that informs some part of your identity, because when you meet somebody, that's what they see, and you don't get to hand them or like telepathically tell them what you're about.
I like that.
That was a very long-winded way though, sorry.
No, it got there eventually. Before we go, where can people find you on social media? Anything you got coming up that you want to tell the world about?
Well, I'm trying to start this new format on TikTok, talking about mental health and fashion, because it's something that I think is so important, and it's such it was such a motivator for me to do the Mindful Monday method, and that's why people are like, why is it not Sustainable Sunday? And it's like, because I honestly want to focus on you feeling good about your clothing, your purchases, rather than, you know, this thing having been made from soil or whatever. So that's one thing I'm focusing on, and so I feel like if someone wants to join the conversation on that, it's something that I'm testing right now, and I feel like even if it performs absolutely rubbish, at least I know that I put out there, and it's going to be on someone's For You page. So, maybe keep an eye out and join the conversation with that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me and chatting about this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining myself and Andrea as we talk about fashion sustainability and the Mindful Monday method. If you want to keep up to date with future episodes of the podcast, as well as more from Eternal Goddess, make sure you're following us on Instagram.